Thanks, Vanessa. Well, it's a busy day in the political world.
Carla Robena joins us with news from the Attorney General confirmation hearing and much more.
President Trump picked a former AG after dumping Jeff Sessions. William Barr faces scrutiny over how he'll handle the Russian probe, although today's hearing is touching on all sorts of issues. Barr previously served as Attorney General in the George H.W. Bush administration. However, in current political climate, many people are asking if Barr will allow for the continuation of the Mueller investigation. Barr believes it is unimaginable that Mueller would ever do anything to be fired.
I believe it is in the best interest of everyone, the President, Congress, and the American people, that this matter be resolved by allowing the special counsel to complete his work.
However, Barr said it's possible the finished report may not be made public. Justice Department regulations treat such documents as confidential investigative material. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis announces plans for sanctions on Airbnb. The governor says the booking company now discriminates against the Jewish community by refusing to allow listings in the West Bank. DeSantis is asking the state attorney general to investigate whether the delisting amounts to a boycott of Israel and would trigger a Florida law banning business with any such companies. Airbnb had been targeted by activists who accused it of profiting off occupied territory, but the company denies it's trying to boycott Israel. Puerto Rico's governor speaks out against the idea of tapping disaster funding for President Trump's border wall. The president is demanding a more serious investment in rebuilding and expanding the physical barriers on the border with Mexico. He's been floating the idea of declaring a national emergency, which might put in play defense dollars or unspent money for disaster recovery. There's $13 billion left that was originally earmarked for Puerto Rico, Texas, California, and Florida.
It's an awful possibility. Just consider what it means. It means using funding for U.S. citizens that are in a vulnerable state, and I'm not only talking about Puerto Ricans, I'm talking about people from California, Texas, and so forth, and using them to build a wall. It would be devastating for us not to get that funding, because it would mean that the dreams of rebuilding effectively would be lost.
President Trump has been off and on about declaring an emergency. The latest signal was probably not, though he insists it's a legal option. A federal judge in New York has struck down a proposal to include a question about citizenship on the 2020 census. This puts a freeze on the controversial move by Trump administration. Natasha Chen explains what happens now, as the administration is likely to appeal the ruling.
A U.S. District Court judge in New York has struck down a proposed question for the 2020 census, which asks, "Are you a citizen?" Critics argue the question would discourage non-citizens and their families from filling out their forms, leading to an inaccurate count of the U.S. population.
We'll be communicating extremely vigorously that people have nothing to worry about.
But Judge Jesse Furman said that even if the decision to add the question didn't violate the Constitution, it was still unlawful. The Justice Department had argued it needed better data on the voting age population,
specifically to help us better comply with the Voting Rights Act.
But the judge said that administration officials may have concealed the real reason why the question was added in the first place. A coalition of plaintiffs challenged the administration, arguing that if people didn't participate in the census out of fear, an undercount could lead states to lose federal dollars for infrastructure and education projects. Electoral votes and seats in Congress would also be misallocated. The Trump administration could restart the process of adding this question the right way, but
we're getting up against the deadline for putting questions on the 2020 census. And I think that's why the administration is much more likely to try to appeal today's ruling and get it reversed by a higher court than go back and start at square one.
In Washington, I'm Natasha Chen.